Hello everyone and welcome to another interview for Cuba Plus and the Sovereign University. This time I have the chance to be with Jimmy Song. Jimmy Song, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be in El Salvador again. Yeah.
It's hot, but here we have AC, so it's all good. Jimmy, I'm pretty sure most of our students know you, but maybe you could explain what you do in the Bitcoin space and what are you known for?
Yeah, so I've been in the Bitcoin space for 12 years now, and I'm a coder, so I'm a developer. I've written 4 different books, and I'm in the process of publishing the 5th one. But I sort of made my mark, I guess, as a technical guy explaining things to non-technical people in the Bitcoin community. Written a lot of stuff. I've spoken at conferences. I obviously published some books. And yeah, I do a lot of different things, including teaching, which I'm going to be doing the next couple of days with the Kubo students.
Yeah, so you are mostly known for one book. Sorry to say that, it's kind of hard to. So, which is Programming Bitcoin. And from that book, you have your courses, right? Could you maybe elaborate to the students what is your program and what you're trying to teach them?
Yeah, so the book came out as a result of my own frustration. So I started coding Bitcoin stuff in 2013, and back then there just weren't that many great resources, and it was very difficult to learn, and it was hard to know even where to start and stuff. But I did learn it because I was coding a Bitcoin open source project at that time. So I did learn various things, and at a certain point I started working for Bitcoin companies and realized my colleagues didn't know what they were talking about a lot of times. So I started teaching them, okay, here's how Bitcoin works, here's what an elliptic curve and so on. And I did that for several jobs, and they all liked it. And sometime in 2017, I decided, okay, well, maybe there's enough people in the Bitcoin community now for me to go teach it. And that's when I quit my fiat job and went into business for myself, which honestly is one of the best things I've ever done. But that started the course, and I've taught the course many times. But that course was the culmination of many years of coding things and trying different things and different ways to present Bitcoin. But it's essentially a way to get programmers to understand Bitcoin at a very deep level. Yeah.
What would you say are the prerequisites to take your course?
If you know Python, that's probably enough, and the rest I teach you, including stuff like the math involved, particularly finite fields and elliptic curves. Those tend to intimidate a lot of people, but I show in the book it's not that hard. It's it's math that you probably learned some of in high school and probably could have been taught to you in high school. It's just the powers that be think calculus and trigonometry are more worthwhile than learning finite fields and elliptic curves. So that's why.
You mentioned you were moving from a fiat job to a Bitcoin job. How was that transition?
Well, it was kind of hard, to be honest, because I was really scared. And I think a lot of people do get scared about sort of leaving something so steady as a fiat job. The thing that they addict you with is a steady paycheck, as well as access to mortgage and healthcare and all this other stuff that usually comes with a normal fiat. Yeah, to make you a slave. So I was pretty scared. I was also just scared as an entrepreneur, right? It's okay, is my idea gonna work? Is anyone gonna sign up for the class? And will I just completely fall on my face? And those were sort of my fears. But it took me about a month to just sort of get up the gumption to go do it. And as soon as I did it, I had this sort of weight of success, right? Just needing to succeed in this thing sort of driving me. And I realized that that's kind of the secret sauce of a lot of entrepreneurs, is this desire not to fail. And turns out to be really good motivation. Taught my first class, I think, August of 2017, which is almost 6 years ago. And refined it after that first one, refined it again after every class since. I've now taught over 700 developers, and I couldn't be happier because in many ways it released me from those golden handcuffs. I was talking to you earlier about taking my entire family around the world and writing a book at the same time and going to different places. We visited every continent except Antarctica. And it was 34 countries, 277 days. It was awesome. And that's not something I could have done if I was chained by Goldman.
Yeah, and it's crazy how we always often say that Bitcoin is freedom, and then Bitcoin teach you or try to force you to improve on yourself, to become an entrepreneur, to actually stop working for the people and actually get the benefit of like your hard work and your proof of work. And that freedom allows you, like you said, to travel with your family, to expand, to write books, to do stuff. So it's really important, I feel, for people to understand that it is possible to get started, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when you're working at a fiat job, it's never really a perfect fit, right? Like, you might be getting paid to be an accountant, but you probably have lots of other talents, right? Like, you're good at probably 5 or 6 other things. So you're always sort of working a little bit inefficiently, and if you're in like a rent-seeking position, you're completely like inefficient in what you're doing. But when you go to the market, there's no room for inefficiency. Whatever you're doing, you're going to have to give it like a really good. You have to find that product market fit and stuff. So you're forced to become much better. So you're actually providing more value to the market, which means that of course you get paid more. And that in turn means that you have this ability to accumulate more capital. And because we have Bitcoin, we have this ability to save over the long term. And you can now just be like, okay, instead of dreaming about getting a studio to pay you to make a movie, now you can just be like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna work for 3 years. I will save enough money, and at a certain point, it will be enough for me to make my dream movie, right? Do the thing that I've been wanting to do for all my life. And that's why I think Michael Saylor calls Bitcoin hope, because saving allows you to do what you've always wanted to do instead of doing what other people want you to do. And that's a very important part.
And the key point here is thinking long term. Like you say, you actually do need to do the work, but then you can save and then you have to wait because you need to get your saving going up in value, as it will probably go as just doesn't keep going up, and well, you know the thing. And then you can make it, but it does require a change of mentality to go from low time preference to high time preference. Actually say, all right, if this is truly my goal, I will plan now, so in 6 years, I can get my kids somewhere, I can do something. And that shift requires a lot of mental gymnastics at the beginning for people that get the pills and really like study Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that mental shift is very unnatural in a fiat world because they want you to be enslaved. They want you to work for them. They want you to continue doing whatever they say, and sort of autonomy is very much kind of frowned upon in many ways in the fiat system. So when you're able to finally do something that is very self-sovereign, and you can go and save and do it requires almost like a radical taking of responsibility for your destiny and stuff like that, which honestly I think is good for most people because they've been bailed out way too many times. So, experiencing the consequences of your own actions forces you to become a better person.
That's true. And when you get into Bitcoin, you start to create your own business. You try to think about, all right, how can I get like inflow of Bitcoin to get non-KYC sats because I earn it. But you also change a lot of other small things in your life that does make a difference. I literally just saw you eat 3 steaks.
You did. That was awesome.
Yeah. So how do you feel like the whole shift in high quality food, stopping soda oil is also related to Bitcoin in that whole like, all right, we're actually trying to be better person, know that we care more about ourselves and exiting the fiat system?
Yeah. I think when you get into Bitcoin, you realize just how much you've been lied to, especially about the monetary system. And when you finally understand how money works, first you get outraged, right? There's sort of that anger stage, and then you realize, okay, yeah, this is a much better system, and there is a better way to go. And you taste that truth, and you realize just how beneficial it can be because if you're providing goods and services to the market that the market wants, well, it's better for you, it's better for them, it's better for everybody. Everyone gets better stuff as a result of your labor. That truth is very satisfying, especially like after you've been working a meaningless job for a long time. To see that you're making a difference, that you're doing something that other people value, well, those are really good things. Now, if you get that sort of like red pill moment for money, there's lots of other things where we're like, okay, so what else have I been lied about? And it tastes just as good to discover other truths where it's like, okay, wow, so I don't have to eat these disgusting vegetables. I don't have to eat like these things that I don't particularly enjoy or whatever, and I could just eat, you know, like the way our bodies are, you can eat a lot of steak and stuff and it's fine. And you know, you need to, you know, be outside in the sun a lot and, you know, live a little bit more like how our bodies are adapted for, instead of sort of living a ghastly fiat life. You know, that's very satisfying. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. And so I'm always wondering why people refuse to open their eyes. Like, what is the missing thing that they're like? Is it because they're too dependent on the system that they just refuse to accept another reality? Are they afraid to lose what they already have? Maybe, I don't know. I'm wondering.
I think fear definitely has a lot to do with it, because most people are loss averse, right? So they're afraid of losing what they currently have more so than gaining whatever potential. And if you look around the Bitcoin community, you know, you see a lot more risk takers than in your typical population. And, you know, and that tends to be the case for any technology adoption curve. It's the risk takers that are early. But there is definitely that sort of hesitancy, largely because they don't really trust it yet. And there's sort of like a threshold of trust. And, you know, one of the ways in which people learn to trust something is just time. So you're right that a lot of people are fearful, but in a sense they've gotten there for a reason, and they're untrustworthy of certain things, and at certain thresholds more people come in, and that's what we've been seeing in the Bitcoin community for a long time.
You think we're missing like education to get them in, or it's more like the price needs to go up, their system needs to go down, so they finally accept reality?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely a way in which a lot of people get into Bitcoin, because they're forced to learn it because their currency is so crappy or something like that. But, you know, I think for a large number of people, you know, at a certain point, it's like, wait, this thing's still around, right? And then they you know, the last time most of my normie friends heard about it was, you know, 2021. If it's still around in 2025, they're going to start asking some questions. And you know, we might not ever convert somebody like a boomer who's you know, who's not interested or whatever. But young people, you know, people like if you're, you know, 15 years old right now, right? You've basically had Bitcoin all your life, like like almost all your life, and it's been a reality. It's like never gone away. Of course, you're going to trust it more just because you're younger and you have more exposure to that sort of thing. And I suspect that, you know, some of these people will have to die off for Bitcoin to really get accepted. I mean, I don't think Warren Buffett's ever going to turn to Bitcoin, but that's okay because he's an old fart and he lost his fastball 30 years ago. So, you know, it's okay.
Yeah, no, it's really going to be a passation of generation, and the youth that are being educated and learn about Bitcoin will be like the key. Here at Kubo Plus, actually, we have like, you will be teaching students that are 18. One of them is like even 17, and they had Bitcoin for so long, and now that the law is passed, they will have Bitcoin for their entire life. Yeah. And then next generation too. So I think you're right. We need to get one generation to another to teach them.
Yeah, and it's going to be a massive wealth transfer, and it needs to happen in every generation anyway. What's particularly weird this time around is that boomers have largely been holding on to their wealth, right? A lot of them aren't leaving any money to their children and stuff like that.
All the states take it with inheritance tax.
Yeah, among other things. But it's just kind of a weird time where all of the wealth is in the hands of old people right now, all over the world. And that's a little bit unique. Previously, it was always the next generation always had more wealth. This generation's just really weird. We're getting a lot of people that aren't gonna get much from their parents at all. So, in that sense, I think Bitcoin is that economic revolution that will accelerate because a lot of these young people haven't gotten much from their parents, or the generation previously didn't really plant trees for us to sit in the shade of or whatever. Well, Bitcoin is going to be that revolution economically, because if enough people are adopting it that are young, the old people, they're going to lose money just sort of naturally. And in that sense, it's peaceful, but also kind of like it'll bring up, I guess, some level of existential crises for some of these older people.
Yeah, and we just talked about educating the younger generation, and so also educating your kids about Bitcoin. And there's something that came often during the lunch we just had, was like how Bitcoiners are having a lot of kids and really trying to focus on the family, on the beauty of family, and really educate their kids to become entrepreneur. We talked about Daniel Prince, which is doing a fantastic job like homeschooling. So yeah, it's really breathtaking, the next generation of Bitcoiners that are going to come to.
Yeah, and Bitcoiners have to have low time preference, like you said, and it's and children are pretty much the most ultimate low time preference activity, because it doesn't really pay off for 20-something years, right? Until they can start taking care of you or something. But that's encouraging for me to see a lot of Bitcoiners having so many babies. I think I counted once, it was 7 or 8 babies just from my circle of friends of Bitcoiners that are just okay, well, let's keep going. And that's desperately needed in so many parts of the world. And I was telling you earlier that fiat money is the reason why so many places are having less babies, because not only do both parents have to work, which limits the number of children, but also real estate is just so expensive that if you wanted to have a bigger family, you need a bigger house. Well, you can't afford it now, right? So it's just all economically constrained, and as a result, no one's having babies. That's a fiat sin, right, on society, and it's it's nice to see that it's starting to reverse at least a little bit in the Bitcoin community.
So you use the word sin, and we are talking about family. You are known for another book. You know where I'm going. You're known for another book, which is I think the English title. I know it in French. It's Thanks God for Bitcoin. Yeah. It's a collaborative book that you wrote with other people of your community. Could you please tell us a bit about what it is?
Yeah, so Thank God for Bitcoin is a Christian argument for Bitcoin. So we've seen a lot of different books, and this was at the time very unique in the market, because people will make the investment case for Bitcoin, maybe the human rights case for Bitcoin, the better for civilization case for Bitcoin or something like that. In Thank God for Bitcoin, we wanted to make the Christian moral argument for Bitcoin. And it's probably with respect to programming Bitcoin, I think Thank God for Bitcoin is the most popular book I've read.
Okay.
Yeah, so and I still get at least one person at every conference coming up to me and saying, wow, I got into Bitcoin because of this. If they're Christian and if they're a Bitcoiner, hey, I started going back to church after reading this book. Because there is this connection between morality and money that I don't think most people understand. Fiat money is a highly immoral money. It is just theft at a very basic level that most people just don't understand or refuse to understand or don't get. And we wanted to appeal to Christians, and for a lot of Christians, making money isn't enough. They need a higher purpose to get into Bitcoin, and this definitely helped a lot of people understand that aspect. What's been interesting to me is that a lot of non-Christians read it, and they're like, "Wow, I'm like, wait, safety. He's a Muslim, right? Wait, why do you want a copy of this book? Oh, I just find the final argument very interesting, or such so and so is Jewish or atheist or something, and they want to read the book. That to me was not something I expected, but it is an argument that I think resonates at a very different level, and that's why we wrote it.
So you got a really good response from the Christian, the US part at least, communities, right? Like
Yeah.
even non-Bitcoiners.
Yeah. And I've spoken on Christian podcasts about it because they were all like, this is not something that we ever talk about. Right? If they talk about money, it's about like, okay, you're not tithing enough or whatever. They don't talk about the form of money, like what fiat money is and what Bitcoin is and what sound money is and what we bring it back to stuff like sowing and reaping. The one who sows, should get some of the reward for reaping. And that's totally not the case with fiat money. It's getting in debt and servicing debt, right? Even that language is very much like idolatrous. It's worshiping money. It's doing whatever the money tells you to instead of that. And we point out other stuff like most people trust in money more than they trust in God, even at church, right? Because you'll ask them, hey, like when are you going to have kids, to like a newly married couple, and they're like, oh, we'll have to wait a few years because we can't afford it. And for me, that's just like the most anti-Christian response possible, because what are you telling me? That if you had enough money, the money would take care of the kid? That's not how you're supposed to be as a Christian. You're supposed to trust God. You need more God. You don't need money. And there are plenty of people that have oodles of money that raise terrible children, right? That do a horrible job as parents. That's not the secret sauce. What you need is, at least as a Christian, is more God. So there's a pervasive fiat mentality everywhere in society, and the church is one of the places that it's been infected.
True. Also, like Bitcoin is at the end of the day a type of protocol of communication. Money is communication, so we can coordinate together. And I really think bring Bitcoin to a community that didn't have it and have them organized around that new currency, that new mindset, could really empower them as time goes. Like if it's done correctly, if let's say the church take care of some education, they try to really because the church is already, I used to live in Chile and there were a lot of, a big Christian community there, and I really saw how the church was helping the kids when the system failed, when the school system couldn't do it. It was the church that was like connecting them, making them go on a good path either on Sunday, making them activities, connecting them. And so like I really think at that point, having a sound money, having a money that they can control also empower those communities at every single level. So it's really beneficial at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we don't need to look further than the community we're in right now, El Zante, right? Mike Peterson is a Christian missionary, and he brought it here, brought Bitcoin here as part of his mission. And Hope House is a missionary organization essentially, and they're teaching kids English and trying to give them a better life. And Bitcoin was a large part of how this community kind of revived, how El Salvador revived. And honestly, it's the way I see it, it's a giant blessing from God, because in a sense they were trying very hard to be faithful to Scripture. And it's the first country in the world that's on Bitcoin, and you can literally see the results. You can see the roads getting better. You can see buildings go up. You can see the country improving, people moving back, more smiles on faces, more people having hope. That's what a moral country, I think, looks like.
That's really good. You've been here multiple times, 3 times. You saw the changes you just talked about. How do you find the adoption of Bitcoin? Not necessarily like the safety of the country, which clearly is safer. We cannot argue it's better. Like there's so much going on as a developing infrastructure. What about the Bitcoin adoption?
Yeah, that's harder for me to gauge. Mostly because when I come here, it's to do something, like to teach this class or something. I'm not really here as a tourist to go check those things out. But at the very least, when I came into the airport, I paid for the visa with big Lightning, right? Like and it took 5 seconds, and they showed me the QR code. Everything worked like that. I would say the bigger adoption is sort of at an almost mental level. it does look like the country is moving more towards sort of like a long-term, low time preference sort of mentality, and that's really nice to see, because people are building for the future and not just sort of like doing high time preference behaviors. Like almost all the stealing and things like that happen because people don't think they'll suffer long-term consequences, or they're not thinking about the long term. I mean, obviously, like the gangs and stuff like that, that they didn't think about like the future of the country when they were, extracting, mafia rents from all these businesses and stuff. So that part is very much sort of in line with Bitcoin. But as far as like specific things, it's hard for me to tell. And honestly, I hope that it's getting more adoption, but it takes time, right? And it's like a 5-year project, not something that you're going to see in 6 months. I think they were maybe had too much of an expectation that it would have gone so quickly. Like I said, like people need to get used to it, understand the sort of like its lasting effect and stuff like that. So 3-4 years from now, I expect more people to trust Bitcoin way more, especially as price and adoption and demand goes up. You're gonna see more people adopt it just from seeing it, and that I think will be probably part of the next bull cycle here. But it's part of that grand experiment that we're in with Bitcoin. How do people adopt it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. I saw the adoption kind of go down when we talk about purely Bitcoin, for a simple reason that they never got financial education. They're like in the US, you have a lot of financial education. In France, we don't have that much, but here they have none. And so when they saw the price going down, they checked their wallet, and from $30 given by the government, they went to 15. And so they thought, the government stole my money. Bitcoin is a scam. And so a lot of people got it wrong, and it takes time to go back at it and explain what is money at the fundamental level, because those like the Salvadorian don't have it. So like you said, I think it's going to be a really long process, but it will make it better, and I think the next bull run will bring it to another level. So it's
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You can't really force adoption on people. You really have to kind of get it, and that, like, even in the Bitcoin community, it's like a multi-year process to really understand Bitcoin and get the long-term value proposition. So for a country, it'll probably take longer.
And the issue here in El Salvador, and it's sad, but because of all the violence, because of all of the theft, most of the people lost confidence on their ability to create a startup, do a project that could last, because they think, well, if I start a business, then someone is going to take it from me. And so they really are shy because they just got kind of liberated, we can say, from the gang. But now they need to like get back the spirit of creating. They really need to trust themselves. They kind of lack. And so one of the big things that the Hope House is making here is trying to explain, and what we're doing here with Kubo and everything, is try to explain to them that it is possible to create a business. Like that's it. Like you just need to. They have the will, but they lack the belief that it can last.
Yeah, and what they need to see is somebody else succeeding,
exactly.
Like their neighbor making lots of money doing something, and then they'll want to get in, and it'll be sort of like a self-perpetuating cycle. Right now, they don't trust it, and I don't know if they really should, right? Because it's only been 12 months since like all the gang members have been like put in prison or whatever. Like, is it possible that some international organization like foments revolution here and puts somebody else in power and releases all those people? It's entirely possible, right? Like it's the sort of thing that you read about in historical CIA stuff. So I don't blame them, but the longer it lasts, the longer it tends to last. It's called the Lindy effect, and I suspect that at a certain length of time, there will be just like a flood of people coming into this stuff. But even now, like compared to a year ago, crazy. Yeah. I mean, just like driving down the road, it was at least a year and a half ago when I first came here. it was just all coconut stands, right? That's all anybody sold on the street. Maybe pineapples, coconuts, they just sold fruit. You go down now and it's like not just coconuts and pineapples, but like their entire like convenience stores and cell phone services and beachwear and pool toys. Just, you know, I mean, I expect it'll get even more as time goes on. But there's demand for different things, and they're trying to sell somewhat to tourists. But like a lot of the people that are eating or using the convenience stores, it's local people. So, you know, there are more businesses, and the more productive people are, the more wealth is created. And, you know, I think they'll really figure this out. And, you know, it's a market economy sort of emerging from the ashes of fiat.
Yeah, no, definitely. What I kind of hope is that for the food, they have less fiat food and better healthy food. But
More meat.
that would be the next stage of the country development, I guess. Speaking of development, I'd like to go back to a bit of Bitcoin, and because you're very technical, and I ask the question to a lot of very technical people that come here. It's like, what are you the most excited about on the future of Bitcoin, and which like BIP or implementation of things you would like to see?
Well, so I still think there's a lot of taproot stuff that hasn't really fully gotten implemented, right? Yeah. So there's this ability to have backups or alternate paths that no wallet's really implemented yet. So for example, you could have a taproot wallet on your phone that if you lose your phone, you can have a backup seed phrase or whatever. But as an alternate, in case that's lost, you can have like 2 of 3 of your friends help you unlock it, right? And that sort of ability is extremely useful, and you get it for essentially free. There's no additional bytes on the output or anything like that. It's just there, and you can have multiple of these sort of different conditions for unlocking it. And they don't even have to know, right? Like it could be like, okay, I lost it, now you guys gotta help me, or something like that. Or, you know, it could be like a private key service by, you know, different companies in the market or something. But that sort of level of security where you can really be assured of having different paths to getting your coin hasn't really been implemented. But I think it could be like a real game changer, because the thing that prevents a lot of people from self-custody is their fear of losing it. Well, if you have multiple paths.
Yeah, it's a bit what Liana from Revolt Team Without Starting, so Kevin Antoine did with like time lock contract that then decayed a multisig from like 4 to 5 to 3 to 5. So it's not possible to make like a multisig 3 of 3, which no one should do, because like you lose 1 key, you're fucked, to like something that can be decay. And that's with like Taproot made it possible with Miniscript, and then people want like Covenant to make it even better. So
I don't know if you need Covenants, but like you can definitely have that just with TapScript. I've coded it. I put it into like, you know, I made it, I tested it, I unlocked like a single address like 13 different ways using on Signet and stuff like that. It was just like, okay, like this all works. It's all available.
So what we're missing is an integration within the wallet?
Yeah, it's wallet developers sort of making that available. The thing is, there's so many moving parts, right? If you are going to back up, then now you need like some user experience that says, okay, now scan your friend's code and your other friend's code and your other friend's code. Like now you have to all be together. Like how are you going to do that? What's the protocol going to be? It gets kind of complicated. And then like if you have a backup set up, you really ought to test it. So how do you test it? If they know about it, then I guess it's a little easier. But if they don't know about it, how do you test it? You know, there's all kinds of little things like that, which I think are honestly usability questions around wallets, which no one's really solved yet. But you know, I really think this could be a giant game changer for self-custody, and you don't have to keep your wallet on Coinbase or Kraken or Binance or whatever. You could possess it yourself, and you have multiple paths of getting it back.
That's true. every time I talk to you, you talk about on-chain. What about Lightning?
Yeah, Lightning is very exciting, and obviously it's still evolving and stuff. The new splicing feature in AsyncQ is or the Phoenix wallet from
Yeah,
AsyncQ
it just
is
got released
really,
like 3 days ago.
yeah, it's really cool, and the ability to just essentially have a single channel and be able to splice in and out, really cool. And you know, Lightning is getting a lot of adoption. You know, a lot of Bitcoin meetups and stuff. That's how you do it. You know, like get money for, like I just exchanged some money. Like a lot of times you can just do that with Lightning, which is like enormously convenient. So that's exciting. But I honestly, like my belief is that the method of payment use case is going to take longer by far than the store value case. And that's largely because most people have good methods of payment and they already have some fiat, so they want to spend that first. Now, there are people that advocate for spend and replace or something like that. Honestly, then you're just kind of using Bitcoin as a really terrible credit card with no rewards and like more risk and things like that. But, you know, I think it could be, you know, it's inevitable that it'll get way more usage. It's just a matter of preparing for it. And I think it's places like here that will probably get a lot of that first because you don't have a lot of POS systems. So although I'm seeing a lot more advertising for it on the road, right? Like I'm like, wait, this wasn't there before. It's like, okay, pay with this card or something. Yeah. Did not exist here a year and a half ago. So they're all sort of trying to get a piece of that pie. Now, Bitcoin can win in that battle, but you know, like we'll see like whether the banking system like pours a lot of money and subsidizes, maybe trying to win that battle, right? Like this is how fiat games work. But yeah, I think Lightning is, you know, the adoption is inevitable. It requires like a very clear use case where there's really no alternative, and one of them is here. We'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's funny. I have the different point of view on the spendle. I do advertise a lot on spend and replace because I do believe it helps like Bitcoiners that do try to get a business to get the money to make it worth it. And at the end of the day, it does pay the networks and make it maybe more economical viable. And I'm like, what do you really lose at spending your Bitcoin and replacing that? Not that much. What does the network and the other people get? They get a lot. So I don't know. I'm curious if you could elaborate on like why would you think it's not a good idea?
Well, so if you're using Strike or something like that,
I'm using like Phoenix.
Yeah, if you're using Strike, then it automatically converts. Right?
Yeah, I don't use that. That's a fiat. Sorry, yeah, that's just
yeah, and that makes sense. The thing is, any method of payment needs to be driven by the merchant. Yeah. It cannot be driven by the consumer because the consumer wants to pay in something. If the merchant doesn't accept it, it's a no-go. Just it's full stop. It doesn't happen. Now, what's going to cause a merchant to receive to only accept Bitcoin?
Because he wants the best money.
Yeah. That's the only time it's going to happen. Now, there are Bitcoiners that are saying, hey, I'm not going to take anything but Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. And there's those. But are their products up to snuff, right? Like, is it so good that, you know, people from outside Bitcoin are coming in and saying, okay, I really need alpaca socks, so I'll go buy. Not really, right? And it's at that point when there's a merchant that has a good that is so good and they refuse to take anything else that they get it. And this happens in like any hyperinflating economy that you study is, okay, their currency is going up, so they're just not going to accept the hyperinflating currency anymore, and the government be damned. It's just I'm not going to receive it. The Weimar Republic, they had a bumper crop one year, and the farmers just refused to sell. They just said, we will not take your depreciation because we can't spend it, right? So that's what ended up happening. So for them, like in those situations, imagine Bitcoin being in the picture. Well, they'll take Bitcoin, but they won't take, you know, dollars or marks or euros or whatever. I think that's when it really like tips it. And a lot of these Bitcoin merchants that are trying to sell, yeah, I get it. You're trying to make a living doing that, and maybe there is a market for people that want, but really the answer is to make your product so good that they can't get it other than by paying Bitcoin, and then you'll get way more adoption as a method of payment.
We were mentioning at lunch that in France we have a restaurant in Lyon that do meetups for Bitcoin, sells meat, like it's a really traditional meat type of restaurant, and he only accepts Bitcoin during meetups to like force everyone to like get up to it. So it's funny. Speaking of meetup, you're from Austin, if I may say it. We can cut it if we need. How is the Texas community on Bitcoin in general, like meetup-wise, dev-wise?
Yeah, I mean, it's grown a lot since I got there. I moved there in like 2012, and I think 2013 was when I first went to the meetup, and it was maybe like 6 people, right? So it's grown a whole lot since then. Right now, there's a Bitcoin dev meetup every month that's like 100 people. There's another Bitcoin pleb meetup that's about 100 people. There's like a design meetup, there's like a lightning meetup. So there's something like every week. There's also a Houston Bitcoin meetup, which I know during the bull market, I was getting like 200 people, and they met at like a car dealership or something. And there's one in Dallas as well that had a bunch. So, Bitcoin community in Texas is definitely growing, and there's a lot of interest. Particularly around like the Bitcoin embassy that they want to establish with Texas, like El Salvador wants to establish one in Austin, just like they did in Lugano. Yeah. It's a great community. Lot of people that moved there during the pandemic, particularly because New York and San Francisco locked down so hard. But yeah, it's grown quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, the U.S. Bitcoin scene is. From the outside, it seems really active. Like you're really pushing on the financial aspect. I feel.
Well, we're trying. I think San Francisco didn't meet for like 2 years or something. So it's like, yeah, and a lot of those people left and came to Austin or something. So some communities maybe not doing quite as well.
That's so cool. That's cool. And you have a president that do want. I bet you got someone who wants to become president that do like Bitcoin.
Yeah, and it's not just like one.
Yeah, how is the lobby scene in the US?
Yeah, so there's been a lobbying scene for a while. So I think it started with Coin Center and Blockchain Association, and so they're all sort of like altcoiny, right? So we started, there's now 2 Bitcoin-only lobbying organizations, Bitcoin Policy Institute and Bitcoin Today Coalition. I'm part of the latter one, full disclosure. But there's definitely a lot more people, especially in politics, very open to Bitcoin. Not just because of the potential, like, lobbying efforts or something, but just sheer numbers. They've done studies on this stuff, and some 40% of American households have some exposure, or at some point had some exposure to this. That's a large number, so 40 million people or something like that. You're approaching some of the biggest lobbies in Washington, like AARP or something. So we're becoming more of a force. I think a lot of politicians are recognizing that. A lot of them also, like, I think, sense that there's something different about getting Bitcoiner support, right? Like, there's the gun lobby, there's the AARP, there's like healthcare lobby, and they're all kind of different, but they're very special interesty, and they have like a specific bill, and it's all sort of related to the money, right? It's all like, okay, give us subsidies for ethanol, or give us subsidies for this type of healthcare or whatever. Bitcoiners are a little different because we want something completely different. And I think every politician kind of suspects that this group has much more staying power, much more conviction than your typical, normie, I guess. And for that reason, a lot of them are looking for Bitcoiners to support them. So you have Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you have that guy Vivek, I can't remember his last name. There's even Trump and DeSantis, they're all sort of open to lobbying for Bitcoiners. In fact, I think the only one that's not really trying to win Bitcoiners over is Biden, and he's the one in power. And we call Bitcoin sort of like this peaceful revolution. If you play your cards right as a leader, you might be able to leverage that to get into power. So I think that's kind of how they're thinking about it.
Do you think the Biden administration in general don't want Bitcoin because of the idea of digital dollar, the CBDC and stuff like that?
Yeah, probably. I suspect that they really want to push CBDCs, just the public won't have it at this point. And it's more like I consider like Biden almost like a puppet, right? He's like senile old man that can't speak correctly. Yeah, and there are people behind the scenes that sort of push his agenda, and those are basically people that are in deep rent-seeking positions that rely on sort of enslaving the rest of the country to fund whatever it is that they want to do. So those people, I think, want a CBDC because they can more clearly control people. And Biden sort of represents that for better or for worse. And they try to get the green lobby in with like all this FUD about energy. They want to make CBDCs sound much better than they are just by, everyone can get like a checking account or something like that. So for them, I think Bitcoin represents sort of the opposite of that, and they want to go against it. But if you're not in power, then crashing that seems very viable and good. Yeah.
I think what you have for you in the US is your culture about finance, entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And when you said the number like 40% something had Bitcoin, that's a crazy high number because you've been taught to save, you've been taught to invest since a really young age. And it's like embedded in your culture. Well, in other places, it's not really. So then, like when we get when they stole our money using inflation and everything, you guys realize it and you fight it back and you're like, all right, well, if inflation is up, I need to save my money. Where do I save it? Well, there's Bitcoin, it's the hardest money in the world. In France, like, oh, where do I save it? All right, I'm going to give it back to the government so they can keep it for me.
Well, not so much. We were talking about the riots earlier. They're all upset about it. So instead of saving, they just get really mad and burn stuff. No, I mean, that's happening in the US too. That's a normal human response to just things getting bad is, okay, like let's cause more destruction essentially. And it's kind of sad, but this is kind of an understandable reaction because they really, like, everyone is being stolen from. And that's the reality that people are coming to realize. I see on the news like all of this FUD around. Oh, it's greedy corporations. Like that's not playing anymore. Like no, like only like they keep trying to push that line. It's greedy corporations. It's gas companies hiking their prices. Like people know how prices work. They're like, okay, it's not these guys' fault. It's because we printed too much money. And that sort of awakening, sort of understanding of their status as essentially fiat slaves, I think is what's leading to a lot of Bitcoin adoption.
Yeah, it makes me think that if euro fails, like we don't really care because we're not the strongest currency in the world, so we already lost. But for the US, you didn't lose, so it's like accepting Bitcoin is kind of accepting also the fact that you're losing the monopoly of the money, and that is a big thing to accept.
The dollar hegemony, and this is talking a little bit about my new book, Fiat Ruins Everything. But there's, I have a whole section on the dollar hegemony and how that's affected the world the past 70 years, or 80 years now, right? Like Bretton Woods was 1944. It's 2023, almost 80 years of this dollar hegemony. But it's basically made everybody else sort of the monetary colony of the United States. Now you could be higher on this ladder And if you're Europe, you're certainly very high on that ladder. If you're East Asia, you're high on that ladder. And you get a lot of the benefits of the Cantillon effect because the ones lower sort of fund everything else. But that's been the reality for 80 years. So for the U.S. to lose it would be very difficult. Yeah. But I mean, even France, right? The Central African franc. Right?
It's a mess. Like, we are literally the central bank of like half of Africa. Yeah. And it's like, they cannot print money. We print money for them. They cannot hold gold because we own the gold for them. Yeah. And we're like, oh no, yeah, you can do what you want, except like literally owning your money and your economy.
And Israel does the same to Palestine, right? Like they make them use their currency. Okay, and this is sort of the monetary colonialism that the U.S. has engaged in for the last 80 years, and to give that up is going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard. It's funded the Vietnam War, wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, to a large degree Ukraine right now. You can't do this stuff at if you're not the global reserve currency. So, that power is starting to crumble. We're hearing rumors of like a BRICS gold-backed currency. We're looking at a bipolar world, at which point Bitcoin maybe becomes sort of the bridge currency between the two. But where the dollar hegemony is not long for this world. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be intense. I think intense is the word when.
And there's a lot of things to think about with that. And I've thought about this somewhat because of the book, but a lot of trade right now is you get parts, like when you make like a pair of blue jeans or something, you get parts from like 8 different countries, right, and all over the world. That's only possible because we have Pax Americana. Yeah? Like shipping lanes are free and there's no piracy. You don't have to have a Navy to ship things. Instead, it's just sort of all controlled by the US Navy, making sure, okay, like there's no piracy, there's nobody shooting people down. And so you have these like giant global supply chains that are entirely centralized, by the way. But it's meant low prices and essentially the ability to get anything anywhere. So, we have strawberries in the summer in the United States because somewhere in the world it's in season and it gets shipped there. That sort of thing wasn't normal. It's only normal now because of the dollar hegemony. Like, what happens if it goes away, right? Like, people have to start manufacturing stuff. The U.S. has outsourced like all kinds of manufacturing. Like, do we even know how to make this stuff anymore? Right? Like you have to start making clothes and shoes and stuff. Well, what's gonna happen? I don't know. And these are the questions I think that we have to really seriously take a look at as the dollar hegemony comes to a close, because there are lots of evil things about it. And I document a lot of it in my book. But there's also some good stuff that once they're gone, I don't know what happens.
So could you tell us, is the book released? No, it hasn't been released. I haven't seen it.
No, not yet. But it should be released in the next couple of months. Fiat ruins everything.
So you told me at the beginning 5 books, so we covered 3. What are the 2 others I've missed?
The Little Bitcoin book and Bitcoin and the American Journey. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, those are the other 2. So, 3 of them are sort of written as a group, and 2 of them are written by myself. So,
yeah. What are your other projects on Bitcoin?
I'm not sure yet, but I do want to write more books. I want to write maybe a book on Bitcoin, not altcoins, or something like that. I want to code something on Nostr. I want to make like a Lightning class eventually. There's a bunch of stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, Jimmy. It's been a while. I won't take too much of your time. I know you have many things to do here in El Salvador. Do you have a last word for anyone here listening, the students of the university, to maybe a word of advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's hope is always in like the next generation, I think, and seeing new people come in and make an impact. That's how it improves, and I'm always encouraged to see that it's always the children, right? Like the kids, the young people that are getting into this. And you know, we'll see how they affect things going forward. But you know, the fact that they've picked up on Bitcoin so quickly and get it is very encouraging to me. It gives me hope for the future.
Amen. Thank you so much, Jimmy. Guys, if you have any questions, just write it in the comment section. You probably will never read them, not answer them, but do it anyway. It helps for YouTube, and maybe, who knows, he will answer them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and yeah, just keep studying Bitcoin. We have like 12 courses. Do Jimmy's courses, get his books. Keep studying. Like, everything has to be built. Don't lose hope, and just get started. See you.